more books on the brain and its connection to our mental life. Okay, I have 3 books here. And also, for anyone asking where to find that Nature article, just type it into Google. It'll pop up. Nature is one of the premier science journals in the world, and so everything it produces gets indexed by Google pretty quickly. The first book is Connectiome by Sebastian Seong. And it's great because it talks about what we know about brain connections and how really we just don't know that much. The next great field of us learning about the brain is how it's connected. Because we know a good bit about how neurons actually talk to each other and neurotransmitters use and how even different individual brain regions work. But how they connect is still such a mystery, and it goes all the way back to Dr. Ramon y Cajal, the great neuroanatomist that I often talk about on here, who just traced these by so much work, trace the connections between different brain cells. It's still a really difficult thing to do. I think we have the connectiome for just a couple of species. There's a worm where it has like a couple hundred of neurons, and now we know how all of them connect, but that took a ton of work. So how the brain connects and what that means for our mental life is going to be a field that's going to bear a lot of fruit in our lifetimes, I think. Next, from the big-hearted MD side, if you know Oliver Sacks, this was, I think, his last book, Hallucinations, and it talks about how the brain produces hallucinations. It's not only about drugs. Lots of things cause hallucinations, but he admits more than he ever did before how much he was into drugs, especially speed. And as someone who was always into speed, it makes him even more relatable. It also talks about how he was secretly queer for much of his life and how difficult that was for him. So Oliver Sacks is one of the greatest science writers who ever lived, and this is his book about how the brain relates to our mental life. It's really a wonderful piece of work. Lastly, probably the best thing I've ever read, Behave by Robert Sapolsky. I have a video about this book already on here, but you also have his entire lecture series for free on YouTube, and this is just a book version of that. So you can listen to it if that's your thing and watch him in his like genial, wonderful California professor type style, or you can read his book, which has all the references in it. What's great is his style is, he says, this is how neurochemists say the brain works. And he goes over that for 2 lectures. And he's like, here's all the holes in why that doesn't make sense and how things work in the real world. And he does that for everything. Hear about what they say about brain regions and why that doesn't work. And he keeps moving up through the various levels of how we think about the brain and then the holes in those ideas. And it presents a really great overall picture of how much we know, but also how little we know of what's going on with how the neuroanatomy of the brain actually relates to how we interact in the world.